In August 2025, Triple H and Stephanie McMahon flew to Mykonos, Greece, a private family vacation, away from the cameras, away from the chaos. And for a few days, it worked. Then Backgrid found them. The photos hit TMZ. Within 24 hours, the entire wrestling world had seen them. And what happened next? WWE went into full crisis mode. Lawyers, takedown notices, wrestlers getting pulled up by the company for sharing the pictures. But here's the thing. The photos weren't the real story. The real story is what those photos unlocked. Because the moment those pictures dropped, 25 years of buried scandal came rushing back to the surface. And today, we're going through all of it. Part 1. The Mykonos Leak. August 15th, 2025. TMZ drops a photo gallery. The headline? Triple H. Stephanie McMahon put bodies on display during Mykonos vacation. That framing alone tells you everything about where this was going. The shots were taken from a distance. Paparazzi with long lenses, catching the couple on the yacht deck, in the water, with their 3 daughters nearby. Private moments. Sold to the highest bidder. And the internet did what the internet does. Within hours, Twitter was flooded with side-by-side comparison shots. Triple H in 2002 versus Triple H in 2025. Memes. Nicknames. Body shaming aimed at both of them. It was brutal. But WWE's fury wasn't about the memes. It was about the daughters. The kids had been in some of the shots. The paparazzi hadn't asked for permission. Nobody ever does. Reports from Fightful Select confirmed. The company was furious. Legal notices started flying. Takedown requests hit YouTube channels, fan pages, wrestling sites. Some videos got demonetized. Some posts just disappeared. And active WWE wrestlers? Several of them had shared the photos on their own social media. They were quietly told to pull the post down. Triple H eventually addressed it on the Pat McAfee show. He joked about the swim trunks, said his daughters had given them to him when they were little. He joked about his body. He tried to laugh the whole thing off. For some fans, it worked. For others, it opened a door that hadn't been closed in a long time. Part 2. The footage WWE burned. Just a few months later, in January 2026, Stephanie McMahon sat down with Trish Stratus on her own podcast. It was supposed to be a career retrospective, a walk through the Attitude Era, the women's revolution, her years on television. Then she said something nobody expected. She talked about wardrobe malfunctions. Plural. The first one, she was taking Triple H's pedigree on the announce table. Arms pinned back, bent over in front of a live crowd and live cameras. And her top slipped. I am staring at my own naked boobs out there. The cameraman, she called him Marty, spotted it in real time. He tried to signal her. But with both arms locked behind her back, there was nothing she could do. She was stuck until the segment ended. She said the cleanest footage was supposedly burned by WWE, but she wasn't done. She described the second incident. A vow renewal segment, a low-cut wedding dress, no bra, a physical moment in the promo, and the same thing happened again. The same cameraman, the same signal. This time she adjusted faster, but the damage was already done. The wrestling internet immediately started digging. Old SmackDown tapings got pulled up. Blurry grabs started appearing on forums. Some fans claimed they'd seen the unedited versions years ago. Nobody had a clean answer. But the bigger conversation that exploded, it was about the Attitude Era itself. About the way women in WWE were dressed for live TV. About the spots they were put in. About wardrobe choices that left almost zero margin for error. Stephanie was the boss's daughter. She had power. And even she ended up in that position. Other women had it far worse. Part 3. The drug wedding. Now we need to go back. Back to November 1999. Because this is where the Triple H and Stephanie story really begins. And it is dark. Stephanie was set to marry Test on Raw in a live in-ring ceremony. Vince walked her down the aisle. The crowd was emotional. It looked real. Then Triple H interrupted with a tape segment. The tape showed him taking a drugged, unconscious Stephanie into a car, driving her to a Las Vegas chapel, marrying her while she was passed out. The camera lingered on her limp body. When the tape ended, Triple H walked into the arena, grabbed a mic, and delivered one of the most infamous lines in WWE history. "Dad, not did we, but how many times did we consummate? Live, on television." Bragging about sleeping with an unconscious woman. To her father. The crowd booed. The storyline took over Raw and SmackDown for months. And the ratings? Massive. The merchandise? Selling. The McMahon-Helmsley era was born. But here's the layer that fans started digging into in 2025 and 2026 as they rewatched all of this old footage. This angle mixed kidnapping, implied assault, and coercion into a hit storyline. It would not survive a single executive meeting today. And the deeper question? The man performing that angle was already falling for Stephanie in real life. The on-screen and off-screen lines had blurred. The drugged wedding was, in some ways, the public version of a real romance already happening behind closed doors. There was also the rejected angle, the one Vince himself later admitted to pitching. A storyline where his character would be revealed as the father of Stephanie's character's baby. Stephanie shut it down immediately. That one was just a little too gross, actually. But the fact that it even reached her desk? That tells you everything about the environment she was operating in. Part 4. CHYNA. When all of this started in 1999, Triple H was already in a serious long-term relationship. Her name was Joni Laura. You know her as Chyna. She was the most dominant female wrestler in WWE at the time. His on-screen bodyguard, his off-screen partner, his closest friend in the business. They lived together. They traveled together. They were a team. Then the McMahon-Helmsley storyline started. And Chyna was the last person to find out what was really happening. She told the full story on Opie Radio years later. She talked about how much she had loved him. She talked about how things started feeling wrong near the end, before she even knew why. Then she found a note, tucked away in Triple H's briefcase. A handwritten love letter from Stephanie, dated a full year before Chyna had any idea the affair was happening. That's how I knew there was just something that wasn't right. Chyna's life never recovered. She was written out of WWE. Her contract wasn't renewed. She moved into reality TV, then adult films. She struggled with addiction for years. She passed away in 2016. Every time Triple H and Stephanie are back in the news, the Chyna interview comes back too. The McMahon photos brought those old clips roaring back on TikTok almost immediately. The comment sections were brutal. And the cheating rumors? They've never fully stopped. Different names have been floated over the years. In 2023, fans noticed Stephanie wasn't wearing her wedding ring. A viral post claimed they had filed for divorce. The story spread across wrestling Twitter like wildfire. Kevin Nash texted Triple H directly. Triple H's response? He said he wished someone would have told him before his daughter dragged him to her junior varsity cheerleading event. The joke killed the rumor, but the rumors always come back. Part 5. Vince and the Fallout. Everything in this story eventually comes back to Vince McMahon. He built WWE. He pushed the most extreme storylines onto television. He shaped Stephanie's career and Triple H's career. He once played matchmaker between them, giving his blessing, then pulling it back, then giving it again. And then, in June 2022, the Wall Street Journal published the first hush money stories. Over $12 million in payments to multiple women over the years. A board investigation. Vince temporarily stepping down. Stephanie was appointed interim CEO and interim chairwoman. Then January 2024 brought the explosion. Former WWE employee Janelle Grant filed a federal lawsuit, accusing Vince of sexual assault, abuse, and sex trafficking. The filing claimed the conduct happened at WWE headquarters. WWE itself was named as a defendant. Triple H and Stephanie were in an impossible position. Vince was her father. He was Triple H's father-in-law and longtime mentor, and he was now at the center of the biggest sex scandal in entertainment history. Reports said they voted against his attempted return to the board. Reports said Vince stopped speaking to them after those votes. Some insiders called it a calculated power move. They had wanted creative control for years, and the scandal handed it to them. Others said they simply did what any executive in that position would do. The TKO merger went through. Triple H became chief content officer. The new WWE belonged to them, but the family damage was real. Stephanie revealed on her podcast that her oldest daughter Aurora had once dreamed of running WWE. After the scandal broke, she changed course entirely. She's now pursuing a doctorate in physical therapy. The grandfather's actions pushed the granddaughter out of the family business. OUTRO. So, did new footage of Triple H and Stephanie shock fans? Yes, but not because of what the photos actually showed. The shock was everything those photos dragged back into the light. 25 years of controversy. 25 years of scandal. 25 years of a couple who built an empire on top of the most explosive storylines wrestling has ever produced, and lived through the real-life fallout that came with it. The McMahon photos were just the trigger. The story was always sitting there, waiting for someone to pull the thread. If you want more deep dives like this, hit subscribe. Because in wrestling, the past never stays buried for long. Here is something the wrestling media rarely puts together in one place. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon did not just inherit WWE. They fought for it, quietly, over years, in boardrooms and backstage corridors and creative meetings that the public never saw. And the McMahon photos and everything they unlocked need be understood inside that larger power struggle, because that context changes everything. Let's go back to 2009. Triple H had been the top in-ring performer in WWE for the better part of a decade, but Vince McMahon still controlled everything. Every storyline, every push, every creative decision. Triple H's opinions mattered because Vince respected him as a performer, not because he had any actual institutional authority. He was talent, extraordinarily valuable, deeply trusted talent, but talent nonetheless. Stephanie had been working in WWE's corporate structure since the early 2000s. She had held the title of Chief Brand Officer. She had real responsibilities. But again, the ceiling was Vince. Always Vince. The company was his creation, his obsession, and his identity. Walking into a meeting with Vince McMahon and disagreeing with him creatively wasn't just professionally risky. It was personally dangerous in a way that very few workplaces can replicate. He was the boss. He was her father. He was the most powerful person in professional wrestling history. Those three things at once created a dynamic that no org chart could fully capture. For years, insiders have described a slow, grinding tension inside WWE's creative process. Triple H would push for certain directions, longer-term storytelling, more emphasis on in-ring quality, building younger talent over time rather than cycling through short-term star power. Vince would override him. Sometimes immediately, sometimes weeks into a plan that had already been set in motion. The roster would be told one thing on Monday and something completely different by Friday, because Vince had changed his mind on a Wednesday afternoon and nobody could stop him. Triple H started NXT as a way to build something with his own creative fingerprints on it. NXT was originally a developmental territory, a place to train talent before they reached the main roster. Under Triple H's leadership, it became something else entirely. It became a wrestling promotion in its own right, with its own aesthetic, its own storytelling philosophy, its own loyal and passionate fan base. NXT takeover events were routinely rated higher than WWE's main roster pay-per-views. The gap was embarrassing for Vince's product, and everyone in the industry knew it. But NXT was also Triple H's proof of concept. He was showing, over years and with real results, that his vision for professional wrestling worked, that audiences responded to it, that you could build something sustainable and critically respected without relying on Vince's instincts about what the public wanted. The tension came to a head in 2021. Vince essentially dismantled the NXT brand that Triple H had built, rebranded it as NXT 2.0, changed the aesthetic, released dozens of talents, and redirected the developmental territory back towards something closer to his vision. Triple H had no power to stop it. He could voice his opinion. He could push back in meetings. But at the end of the day, it was Vince's company and Vince's call. Then in May 2022, Triple H suffered a cardiac event. He announced his retirement from in-ring competition. He stepped back from his day-to-day WWE duties while he recovered. 1 month later, the Wall Street Journal published the first hush money story. The timing matters. Triple H was not in the building, professionally speaking, when Vince's world began to collapse. He was recovering. He was watching from a distance. And when Vince temporarily stepped down and Stephanie was appointed interim CEO, Triple H was suddenly in the conversation in a way that nobody had anticipated a year earlier. By July 2022, just weeks after the initial story broke, Triple H was named WWE's Executive Vice President of Talent Relations and Head of Creative. The role that Vince had personally controlled for decades, creative, now belonged to Triple H. Think about what that means. The man who had been overruled in creative meetings for years. The man who had watched his NXT project get dismantled by his father-in-law. The man who had been told, implicitly and sometimes explicitly, that his vision wasn't what Vince wanted. That man was now running creative for the entire company. And the product changed almost immediately. Talent who had been released or buried under Vince suddenly reappeared. Sasha Banks, renamed Mercedes Moné, eventually departed on her own terms and then returned on WWE's terms. Karrion Kross came back. The Viking Raiders were repositioned. Long-term storytelling started appearing on television in ways it hadn't in years. The commentary became more focused on athletic accomplishment. The presentation shifted. Fans who had been watching Raw and SmackDown out of habit suddenly found themselves genuinely engaged again. The critical reception improved. Ratings stabilized. The product felt different, not because the performers had changed, but because the philosophy guiding them had. Vince returned to board directors in January 2023, citing the TKO merger negotiations as his reason. He said he needed to be present to oversee the business deal. Triple H was already running creative. Stephanie had stepped back from her interim role. The power dynamics inside WWE were shifting in real time, and the TKO deal was going to crystallize them permanently. Then the Janelle Grant lawsuit dropped in January 2024. And Vince's position became completely untenable. He resigned from TKO's board within days of the lawsuit becoming public. Reports indicated that Triple H and Stephanie had made clear, through their votes and their positioning, that they were not going to support his continued involvement in the company. The man who had built WWE from nothing, who had turned a regional wrestling promotion into a global entertainment brand, who had shaped both of their careers and their marriage, was effectively removed from the institution he had created. Triple H was now, undeniably, the creative authority of WWE, not by appointment, not on an interim basis, permanently. The same names, the same clips, the same debates that have been running since 1999. China's name will come up every single time. The drug wedding clip will resurface every single time. The Wardrobe Malfunction podcast episode will be linked every single time. The Vince McMahon timeline will be recited every single time. That is not going to change, because the internet has a perfect memory, and wrestling fans have the longest memory of all. The past in professional wrestling is not the past. It is always present, always available, always one click away from being the most relevant thing in the conversation. Triple H and Stephanie McMahon built an empire. They survived scandals that would have ended most careers. They navigated a family implosion that played out in public, in federal court filings, and on Netflix documentary series. They came out the other side, running the company. But they will never fully escape the story that started in 1999. The drugged wedding, the affair, China, the Attitude Era, Vince. Those things are not chapters that close. They are threads that run through everything. Through every headline, every photo gallery, every podcast confession, every paparazzi shot from a yacht in the Aegean Sea. Pull one thread, and the whole story comes with it. That is the Triple H and Stephanie McMahon story. That has always been the Triple H and Stephanie McMahon story. And it is nowhere near finished. Right there, that was the environment. That was the system. And the women who survived it, who built careers inside it, who became stars despite it, did so through a combination of extraordinary talent and an equally extraordinary willingness to absorb things that should never have been asked of them in the first place. Triple H runs a different company now. The policies are different. The structures are different. The HR department is real and functional in ways it was not during the Attitude Era. NXT was built from the beginning with a different culture in mind. One that took in-ring craft seriously and treated performers as athletes rather than assets. But the women who built that Attitude Era with their bodies and their labor and their tolerance for a system that was not designed to protect them, most of them never got the retrospective reckoning they deserved. Most of them got a Hall of Fame induction and a thank you speech, and then the conversation moved on. China